To get started on this exercise, you should have downloaded the Corner Pens resource folder, and inside of this folder, we're giving you an After Effects file as well as a footage folder. If you have a look inside the footage folder, you'll notice there's 3 different Photoshop files. Now, these first 2 files are all of the elements that are used to animate your app. The other one is a mock-up of a photograph of a phone that we're going to put your app into. You'll notice that this mock-up is in perspective, and that's what this exercise is going to be teaching us. Now, if we go back to our main file and open up the After Effects file, once you're in After Effects, make sure you've got your pre-comp composition selected and open. You can see that all of the animation is already done for us. So the first thing that we're going to do is to go over to our project panel, and if you double click on the empty area at the bottom of it, this will bring up your little importer. Let's choose the Digital Studio Photoshop file and make sure we're going to import this as a composition that retains its layer sizes. We can say open. We'll say OK to this. Let's go back to our project panel and organize this by putting your Digital Studio Add Comp, by clicking it and dragging it into the little comps folder. Then with it selected, you can hit the return key, and let's call this our main comp, Digital Studio Add. Within here, we can double click on this composition to enter its timeline. One thing I do want to note, if you're following along with the book does have a mistake in it. It's going to ask you to click on the anticipation menu. It's really asking you to click on the Digital Studio Add menu. From here, if we need to zoom in, I'm going to let mine fit to here. Let's place our pre-comp of our slide out menu into our timeline by dragging it down below the expert text layer. We want it above the phone so that we can see it. With the layer selected, let's press the S key, and we're going to scale this down by 75%. We don't need to add a keyframe to this. All we're doing is just scaling it down to get something manageable. Now, the effect that we want to apply to this can be found under Effects, down to Distort, and then choose Corner Pen, which is towards the middle of that pull-out menu. From here, you can see your image has 4 little pins at the corner of each edge. We can click and drag and place these at the corner of where our phone is going to be. This is going to distort our composition, but since we're placing it in the same perspective of the phone, it's going to look natural because it follows the vanishing point that our screen would naturally have. Just make sure, you may need to zoom in, that it gets pretty close to where it needs to be, and then it aligns nicely with that area. If we were to play our animation, you can see now it fits nicely onto our screen. However, there's still a slight problem. If I was to turn off visibility for this, and you look at the phone itself, the phone is a glass screen, so it needs to have a little bit more of a natural reflection to it. Let's add a little bit of a reflection to our design now. To do this, we'll go up to Layer, down to New, and let's create a new solid layer. This is going to ask us what we want to set this up as. We're going to call this our Light Effect layer. The size of it can be the same size as our comp, so choose Make Comp Size to make sure everything else is good. And let's set our background color to just be a solid white. When we say OK, this will give us our solid white new layer on top of everything. Now we can go down to our timeline and choose our pre-comp layer, press Command or Control D to duplicate it, and let's move this duplication on top of our lighting effect. I'm going to hit Return and rename this our Track Matte. With this done, let's choose our light effect layer. We need to toggle over so we can see the different modes that we're working on. And with the light effect layer selected, change your track matte to be no matte to the track matte. And we want to set this as an alpha layer. Now you can see that white is only showing up inside of that particular area. With the light effect layer still selected, let's add one more effect to it by going up to Effect, down to Transition, and then choose Linear Wipe, which is down towards the bottom. This linear wipe effect will allow us to add a gradation to it at a certain angle. So if we go up to our effects, We want to set the transition complete value to be 60%. We want to set the wipe angle value to be 70. And we want the feather amount to be 150. Whoops, excuse me. That should be 60. Our angle, there we go, should be 70. And now the feather could be 150. With this little light reflection added, the last thing we need to do is to knock it down so that we can see it a little bit better. With the lighting effect layer selected, press the T key to open its opacity and knock down the opacity to 40%. Now when it plays, you can see it has a nice sheen and we can see the entire screen on top of it. The last thing we need to do is to save our file and add it to our render queue. Once it's finished, render the movie and upload the After Effects file and your movie to the class page.